Okay, boom, we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the Settlers podcast. I just had another great conversation with my friend Brendan Robb, one of the co founders of The Red Village, a dark fantasy RPG that is being built on Polygon. I actually found Brendan and the Red Village team a few months back. They had just finished their first community NFT sale. I remember going to their Discord and seeing the founders just on there 24/7. I thought to myself, do these guys even sleep? The Red Village is a great example of how important community is in building successful gaming projects. I remember when I first met Brendan, he told me that if the founders weren't in there every day, why would the community ever care about this project? Which I think is a great example of what Web3 is really about. We talked today about his inspirations growing up, the games that he used to play. Quick spoiler, RuneScape and Jagex was a big inspiration point. What the Red Village is trying to create for the world and what a future might look like for gaming and the metaverse as we know it. So drop a like if you're enjoying the content that's coming out. It helps us get found and recommended to other gaming fanatics like ourselves. And thank you for supporting. Let's get into it. Boom. We're live. I got my friend Brendan from the Red Village. How are you, friend?
Always good, mate. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Brenda, give who are you, mate? Who are you, and what are you working on today?
So I look after communications for a project called the Red Village, which keeps me busy, 23 hours a day. And that's what I sort of do, mate. I write a lot of words, and I look after a lot of our sort of partnerships and sort of keep us relevant in the space.
Uh, Definitely underselling already. Brendan's also one of the co-founders of the Red Village. Um, I started interviewing for the Settlers because people like you are building the future of gaming. So, if you could actually take the audience back to, I want us to understand who you are, Brendan. So, tell us about gaming. What role has it played in your life, and who you are today?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I'm like probably the classic sort of late '80s, early '90s kid, in that my first console was a Super Nintendo, which was sick. So I was obviously playing a whole bunch of Mario and back in the day, like everything through that whole Nintendo era, right? From Donkey Kong to Mario Kart and GoldenEye. I could still walk through that first level in GoldenEye with my eyes closed, man. I know exactly how to drop out of the vent and shoot the guy in the head. So been a huge part of my life, right? Like when we were growing up, we go to console parties, we'd have LAN parties. Counter Strike was massive when I was younger. But the thing I think that's really brought me to where I am now, and for a lot of people in the space, is definitely RuneScape. RuneScape was the most formative experience for me ever, waking up at 1 o'clock 2 o'clock in the morning with a 56k modem. I'm like, I don't know, 10 years old or something, 12 years old. Like, this is 2000, this is the original RuneScape. Not long after it's come out, and stuffing a modem on the back of my computer to stop the sound of a 56k modem ringing through my house, and waking my mum up so she'd get cranky at me. And doing that to log onto a server to play when Americans and Europeans were on, so there'd be populated servers, and that was a huge part of my sort of formative experience, and obviously for a lot of us, it taught us not only what a game could be in terms of interacting with a whole bunch of people all over the world simultaneously, like in real time, but also, how to create your own narrative in a game as well, because it wasn't like this overarching sort of storyline really for RuneScape. It was more just, here's you, and you have autonomy. Off you go. What do you want to look like? And, well, choose your own adventure, which I thought was a really exciting way to do a game, and then you look at all the things that it teaches you around, like how to trust people, how to like exist on,
Mm.
a platform where there is no, no authority to guide you, how to like trade, how to value things, what in-game economies look like. It was for everyone in Web3, whether they say it or not. It was the only reason Web3 is here is RuneScape, and RuneScape is huge for me and for my co-founders, right? We all absolute diehard RuneScape guys. So that's probably the biggest impact and influence that gaming has had on me. I've had a lot of fun with a lot of games over the years, but that one really drives where I see the space now and what we're trying to build at the Red Village too.
We have to clip that. It's Web3 gaming exists because of RuneScape. We need at Jagex this one. What it's actually
I've written about it a lot, mate.
what? Why do you think so many people flag RuneScape as an inspiration for Web3 gaming?
I mean, just that, right? It teaches you about a market. It teaches you about having, control of your own goods. Okay, yeah, you don't own them, whatever, but having your, your stuff, your inventory, and being able to take that, trade it, swap it, being able to go into an environment where you can be attacked by other players, but then deal with the consequences of that. I think it's just a good sort of microcosm for Web3 in general, but then also the game itself just lends itself really, really well to a Web3 environment. And if that was to be ported onto the blockchain now, it would be game changing, right? It's such a cool concept. But and I think it's just the age thing as well, right? RuneScape, I don't know, 99 release, something like that. 2000s when I was started playing, and you look at that, people that are in that age are really, a lot of the people are the founders driving forward Web3 today, and it's still running, right? RuneScape has still got like 160,000 daily active users, which is 23 years later. That's so wild, it's not even possible to like to think about. But yeah, so there's a lot of people who just have that crossover, like even if you weren't playing it in 2000, you were playing in 2005 or 2010, and now you're in Web3 because you realize, like, I like games and Web3 is the future of games, so why wouldn't you pick
Yeah,
it, right?
these kids start flipping NFTs, but the real OGs were merching on the Grand Exchange, buying rune plate body. I like that.
100%, bro. They'll get their armor trimmed out in the worldy, but it's all good.
The value of gold doubled. Oh god. What's the Yeah, what actually that's a fascinating question. So RuneScape was really, I think a lot of games today are inspired by what the in-game economies that games like RuneScape have built. Why do you think Jagex, which were the developers of RuneScape, why have they not got into NFTs if this ecosystem fits so well?
um, Good question. And I'm not so sure that the answer is as clear cut. I could be wrong on this, but I do remember reading recently that they are having a little foray. They're having a little explore. They're testing the waters with some Web3 stuff. But there is also some stuff which is tokenized, right? A Grand Exchange on well, I don't know exactly how it works. I haven't looked into it too deeply, but there's some sort of tokenized Grand Exchange, which has been set up community and is community run as well. So there's obviously some undercurrents pushing them towards that. But yeah, like I've seen some footage of the new sort of Jagex like battle tournament sort of style RuneScape, and it looks sick. And I do understand there's some sort of undercurrent of Web3 sentiment there. But yeah, look, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you exactly why. We've seen it with a lot of game studios. There's a bit of hesitation in moving towards Web3, and I think a big part of that was just it wasn't done initially, perfectly. Games, I think there's a bit of this sort of underlying sentiment that it's just a money grab, right? And if you look at the history of Web3 gaming up until now, like, you can understand that, right? I get that. But listening to, even guys, listen to Robbie speak at Immutable the other day, and he's talking about it's really fundamentally, this is a supply and demand issue, right? And I really resonate with that, because it's not that people don't want Web3 games, it's just that Web3 games aren't good yet, right? Once the supply is there, the demand will be there. There's no doubt about that, I don't think, in anyone's mind. But I think that there's these studios that are just hesitant to be that first leader into Web3, just because you're not sure what the blowback's going to be like. And you've seen a bit of blowback with like Ubisoft and stuff, right? And internally, externally,
Mm.
on these decisions, just because I think people see it as a money grab. They don't see that it can just be a hectic game, a really good game, which exists in almost, indeterminately from a traditional game, but it just has these, tokenized element and these in-game assets and
Mm.
proper ownership. But yeah, I think that's probably why they'd be hesitant. If I was in a strategic position at JGX, that's probably why I would as well.
Yeah. One of the key frameworks that I've always thought about is if you want to look at where technology adoption is really led by, it's not the lagging indicator is consumer interest, which is the consumer finds out about this eventually. It is actually where are the devs going and where are people building. And
Of course.
like what we're seeing today is just an incredible amount of builders going and building. When you want to build a game, you go NFT first, you go token first before and start with communities like that. And so, what's your take on? You talk about Robbie Ferguson from Immutable, talking about onboarding. What is? Do you think in order to capture large scale interest, it starts with one of the established traditional studios coming into the space, releasing an NFT game, or will it come organically with builders building that flagship game that really captures interest? Is it from the traditional publishers, or is it from someone organically Web3?
I'm not sure that it matters. To be honest with you, I
Mm.
just don't think what's going to drive it is a game that suddenly people go, this rocks, right?
Yeah.
That has that mass adoption, and that will be the inflection point. Whether that comes from a massive trad studio that ports something over, and suddenly everyone goes, "Well, this is really cool," or whether that's just an as to now unheard of bunch of sort of indie developers who bring out the next, whatever World of Warcraft, right? And it's massive and it just takes off. I don't think it matters. What matters is that there'll be a point that suddenly a whole bunch of gamers, like you and I, like 3 billion gamers that exist in the world will go, wow, this is really cool. I like this game. And as soon as that happens, it doesn't really matter where it came from. That will just, the rising tide lifts all ships sort of analogy, but that will just light a wildfire to the space, right? Because suddenly
Yeah.
everyone will then have the confidence to go, okay, all these studios that are building epic Web3 games, Blowfish Studios here in Sydney, or like Immutable, or whoever Epic like is going to build stuff and release it. Suddenly everyone's going to go, okay, I'm excited for this. I'm waiting for this to come out because it is going to be good because X, Y, and Z has already been good and shown me that
Mm.
things don't just look like floating little cartoons and I earn $1 a day.
Mm.
And I think it doesn't matter where it comes from. It'll just come from somewhere. But as soon as it starts, it'll be like a tidal wave, like a tsunami. It won't stop.
Mm. Mm. What was the inspiration behind the Red Village, and what opportunity were you trying to go after?
Good question. So, the inspiration for us at the time, and I should, there's three sort of co-founders of the Red Village itself, but um, we were in the NFT space. We were sort of doing some strategy and consulting for some companies in NFTs at the time, and obviously we've got a sort of deep history with crypto and all this sort of stuff, as a lot of people do. And really, at the time for us, it was like looking at the market and going, "There's a lot of stuff happening here. We can see where this is going." For us, hand to heart, was just going, RuneScape would be the perfect Web3 game. And we're talking, like January 2021. It's 2022 now? Yeah. So like nearly 18 months ago, right? We're sitting around, and this is before people had sort of started to draw those lines. And we're going, RuneScape would be the perfect thing for Web3. This is where the economy will move. We need to start as soon as we can to build this, but it takes a long time to build things. It's not fast. And then at the time there was and still is a massive game called Zebrun, which was a big inspiration for us because we looked at their mechanic, we looked at their model. It's still one of the most stable models in Web3. I think they've done a brilliant job, right? And we looked at that and we go, let's replicate that, but instead of a horse racing game, let's make it, a sort of fighting game, right? So we have this tournament mode in the Red Village ecosystem, which is currently live, super engaging. It keeps people playing. People are having a really good time playing that. It's modeled after Zrun, and that just gives us this kind of ability to go out and build the RuneScape of the blockchain, the RPG, which is our MMO RPG, which is really our sort of North Star. That's where we're heading. But in the meantime, it just keeps people engaged. So what we sort of looked at the space was, this is where it's going to go. People are going to want to play games. The game that we would want to play is RuneScape. Therefore, that's what we'll build. We're building for the community, obviously. That's a very big important part of building anything. It's not just building what we'd want to play, but we know a lot of people want to play RuneScape. So that's where we started, and that's still where we're headed. All this time later, which is really exciting for us.
And so, what, from my opinion, the Red Village is one of the most promising projects in the space. Why do you think it's worked out well for you guys? I know that when you first launched your NFT sale, it was in quarter 3, quarter 4 of last year. The excitement was built over there. But what we see, and I've seen a whole bunch of games come through when momentum die and communities become disengaged. What's been the journey like for yourself and the community, and why do you think you guys have done as well as you have today?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of what we learnt, particularly Q1, Q2 this year, was a lot of people, in the space, right, as speculators. We knew that, but it really sort of shows its face when token prices drop, and people sort of abandon projects that they were pretty evangelistic about not so long before. So, the Red Village tournaments, they're not tokenized or anything like that. It's played in wrapped ETH, and so we haven't had that as a driving force behind the reason that our community stayed from day one. People came into this community, and we were, this was community by design, right? This isn't a happy just coincidence that, okay, a bunch of people came together in a room and suddenly started really liking a project. We spent a lot of time looking at successful projects, a lot of time looking at successful engagement mechanisms, and monitoring those, replicating them where we could, and rolling them out in our own community. And then it's self-sustaining because people enjoy being in there. There's not this overarching financial drive for these people to be in there, that are trying to play to earn, which I'm not a huge advocate for, because it's really hard to sustain a play to earn community, I think. So with what we're building, it's just a place. The way I like to think of the space is about social gaming, right? The metaverse in general, but any game is just an opportunity for people to socialize. If they can hang out and have a good time and have some fun while they're gaming at the same time, you're onto a really sticky product. And that for us has been at the core of this, right? So the players want to be there just because if you go into our Discord, pretty much 24 hours a day, it's like a little party in there. Everyone's having a good time, having a good laugh, and there's a lot of really, really good people in there, and we just encourage that. We support that, and we get in there too, right? As founders, that's a huge mistake that a lot of founders make, is they abandon that community. They think that it'll just run itself. It's an active pursuit, right? So Lucian, one of our founders, is probably in Discord, maybe 8 hours a day. And myself and another founder will be in there an hour or two a day as well. And that's making everyone feel heard. It's making everyone feel like their suggestions matter, and we act on suggestions when we get them. And it's just having a good time as well, right? Like, we have a floor bot in there. If you say the word floor, you start talking about prices, you get slapped. Stuff like this. We're not building for what's the floor price going to be in 2 weeks. It's like, what's the community going to look like in 3 years? And that's a really important thing for us. But yeah, it just boils down to, I think at the end of the day, having a good product, thinking about how you design your community, thinking about where you want to be, and taking the community along on that ride with you, communicating every step of the way what you're doing. And that tends to make people want to hang out because they're having a good time. And I see it in a lot of Discords that it's talk about pricing, or it's talk about when, or it's they're not necessarily the most healthy sort of narratives to really string your community along on.
Yeah, that's really interesting as you compare some of the, especially during the last bull market, we saw all of these tokenization before any demos or game was actually released. What's your take on? You mentioned things like the sustainability of games like play-to-earn games. A lot of people look at Axie Infinity. What are the projects that you have respect for in the space that you've been inspired by? Other gaming projects, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, Zedrun, obviously, one of them. I think they've done a really good slow and steady wins the race, hare and the tortoise kind of approach to tokenizing a product and to just involving the community. And we see that they're one of the earliest projects, and they're still one of the biggest and most active. So I think they've been fantastic. From a sort of similar to us space, I think
Mm.
Phantom Galaxies, obviously huge inspirations to us in that they're actually building, what I would consider a AAA game that will undoubtedly bring a lot of people over that play trad games and to play in the space. I think they've got an incredible model, and it's being built really well, and it's really thoughtful the way that they're going about everything. So that's been wild. Undead Blocks is another one that I think is super sick because I love the game. I love FPS. I love shooters, and it's got an interesting token economy, and I think that they've done stuff pretty well there. But there's a bunch. I just saw some gameplay for My Pet Hooligan today, which looks sick too. There's a bunch I think that are doing things really well. And hopefully really sustainably. It's hard, right? Because this is such a nascent or a new area to say what isn't isn't going to work. Like we don't really know what a sustainable economy sort of looks like in Web3, but Web2 has given us a whole bunch of clues, right? There's a lot of sustainable Web2 game economies out there, and it's about replicating those and tokenizing those, and I think that'll work. And yeah, so they're the main projects I've got my eye on. Like who's doing
Mm.
stuff well? I think they're doing stuff well. Sandbox obviously doing stuff incredibly well, building for true mass adoption.
Mm.
But that's a while away.
Do you think, and I've always thought about this as well, there's so many games that if we go foundationally, do you actually think gamers care about digital ownership? Like, why do we need NFTs and tokens in game? Like, does a gamer actually need any of um, these new instruments to play in game?
I think they and until they need them, they don't know that they need them. And that's probably of importance, right? People are quick to dismiss it and then not realize that there might be a situation where suddenly, oh yeah, it is actually pretty cool that I own this character because I'm over this game now and I'm out. And I spent a lot of money on it. I wouldn't mind getting some cash back for that. Do I think people care about governance and things like that? Yes and no. Like yeah, there's as with any community, there's going to be a like super strong core support group that do care deeply about a game and where it goes and the direction of it and will want to have a say in that. And will they want to pay to have a say in that? Yeah, if they're committed and the game's sick, I think they will. There always will be. There might not be like it's. I don't necessarily think you're going to have these massive DAOs of hundreds of thousands of people all voting in a collaborative way. This is why democracy has developed how it has outside in a political sense, to have like delegated responsibility. We elect people to make decisions on our behalf, and I think the same sorts of things will happen with DAOs. But I still think that that's valuable to people to be able to have a
Mm.
say when they want in the direction of these aren't just games. These are, like I said, they're social gaming platforms. They're going to be the things that link us to the metaverse, and or to metaverses, and that is something people are going to want to have a direction of because you're not just spending some time in here. You're going to be spending a lot of time in this sort of digital space. And so yeah, I think it's important that people have an opportunity, even if they you know don't take that up. It's important they have the opportunity to have a say about things. And does digital asset ownership matter? Yeah, that it will. It has to, because people, if you don't want to own the stuff that you buy, um, I don't really know how to argue against that. If you're
Yeah.
just happy to throw money at something and never see that money again, then yeah, maybe that's digital asset ownership's not for you. But for the vast majority of people, um, being able to have authority over your assets is important. I don't think it necessarily means that we need to have these games that are completely on chain, that every aspect is provable, that it has this giant sort of provenance across the blockchain. I think it's more that there will be digitized assets that are ownable within a traditional game, and I think that that's where the nexus will be. But
Mm.
yeah, like it's important. Time will tell where the penny settles and where everyone where everyone finds that importance lies for them. But I think that it's a change management thing. People are more scared about the concept than they are the reality. And I think if you build it in such a way that there's this like seamless integration between a trad game and a Web3 game, and people don't even realize that they've got digitized assets or that they've got owned assets until they realize that they can sell them, that's when you've won. They don't realize they're playing in Web3 until
Mm.
they need it, and then they can, and then they go, this is cool. And that's when you've won.
Yeah, that reminds me of Steve Jobs' quote of, yeah, people didn't realize they needed the iPhone, and then I created the iPhone. It's like he had the vision before consumers even realized that they needed it. And I think that's a same perspective. Even on a philosophical level, when we think about things like the financialization of everything. All of our assets will be financialized and analyzed, and the time that you put into a game, like those digital assets, definitely have value as well. It's kind of like that RuneScape vibe. It's like there was so much black market trading of gold and accounts, and that existed 20 years ago. Play to earn gaming existed in RuneScape a long time ago before Axie.
Dude, people are always going to find a way to trade stuff. You can stop it as much as you want, but no matter what the good is, there's a black market for it. So you may as well, you know, you may as well just open that up to being like, legalized or at least, approved, sanctioned.
Mm. What do you think? What do you hope that the Red Village is able to create for the space? Like, why are you spending all your time building this project?
I mean, what I really hope for the Red Village is, we're dark fantasy, right? Um, and dark fantasy is not something that's really found in Web3. There's a bit of fantasy out there. There's, people are starting to build things away from, that sort of cartoonized style game, and they're starting to build things with higher fidelity, things that look more real, that feel more real, that, are like the games that most people play. And not to say that there's not cartoon games that are wildly successful, right, in life, Pokemon stuff, but um, the the hope for us is we look at dark fantasy, we go, that's a niche, but it's a big niche, right? This is not like a sliver of the pie. You look at dark fantasy and, Elden Ring or Diablo or Skyrim or The Witcher or all these sorts of games, and you're talking like, Diablo 100 million copies sold over the course of the series, and these is a big niche. So we're hoping to bring that dark fantasy to Web3. And that means, a higher fidelity game. It means some darker themes. It means having cool lore, having the opportunity to create a world that you really do sort of exist in and engage with. Again, you have a choice about how you do that, particularly in the RPG and what, choose your own adventure sort of stuff. But it's bringing something more adult, more mature, to the blockchain. That's really what we hope to do at a higher level. And then obviously, we want to be one of those first games that people suddenly pick up and go, I like playing this game. This is actually a really fun game. I'm going to tell my friends about playing this game because I'm enjoying it, and I'm not just here for the money, but I'm here for the fact that this is actually a really good experience, and we hope to be one of the first of those, and there'll be a bunch of those in the next the final, I'd say quarter 4 this year, quarter 1 next year, that really start to rock the space. And we just hope to be, caught up in that sort of tidal wave. But for us, it's just about having an opportunity. Like, what gets us excited is that we're building something fun, right? Like, this is just fun. At the end of the day, this is just an opportunity to really make our mark with some sort of creative sort of stamp on the world, and build the things that we liked playing when we were growing up, and we still like playing now. And that's important to us. I wouldn't enjoy playing not enjoy playing. I wouldn't enjoy building a purely DeFi sort of game, because it just wouldn't be there for me. Like, it wouldn't stimulate me intellectually, I don't think, in the way that creating a world of of monsters and knights and dragons and stuff will.
Very RuneScape inspired. We can definitely see those inspirations. They deserve a bunch of credit for this one. What? Yeah. What do you think that we have? Do you think gaming's going to be like this winner take all market where there's just one predominant space, like third space? Like, people talk about third spaces of, you have work, you have home, and then this virtual area where you might spend uh, that time with online. Do you think that for a game perspective, it's just going to be one game that people go to, or is it Does one winner take all the market share?
Hope not. No, I mean absolutely not, mate. You can look at any sort of traditional market to see that that's not usually the case, but gaming, for example, is one of them, right? There's a lot of
Mm,
games that people play. There's a lot of MMOs, there's a lot of battle royales, there's a lot of RPGs, and we know that people buy a console not to buy and play one game, right?
mm,
And I think that's a really destructive view that I've seen some projects take in the space, is like winner takes all. It's not.
mm,
This isn't zero sum. This is certainly the more that win, the more that win.
mm.
It's a bigger pie that everyone can have a slice of, and just exactly that. You don't buy a PS5 and then buy one title and go, that was sick. You buy a PS5 and you buy 10 titles or 20 titles and you play them all and you have fun with all of them. And one day you feel like playing FIFA, and the next day you feel like playing Elden Ring, and the next day you feel like jumping on and playing Counter Strike. Um, it's certainly the best way to look at it is that as soon as that mass adoption starts taking off, one title will kick it off, but
Mm.
then that will spread, that will flow to all the other titles, like I said before. So we definitely don't want to just see one title win. It's why we try and band together and partner with as many projects as we can in the space to raise awareness and do all these things that are really, really important, to show confidence, I guess, to retail, to consumers, that we are building this space despite a bear market for tokens and all that sort of stuff that exists. That we're still here, we're still building, that there's a community of really good games that are sticking together and making really good inroads in development. So for us, yeah, like I don't mind who it is. It doesn't matter. Alluvium is one of the big contenders, right? To be the biggest thing in the world, and if so, great. That's another Australian project, Sydney, and that's just going to make tidal waves, and the lake's going to get more, filled up with water, and our boat's going to rise too. So yeah, we're all for lots of people winning.
Why do you think Australia's done so well? And obviously, I think both of us are Australians. There's a lot of vested interest here, but we definitely over-index for game builders and also just the Web3 gaming market in general. Like you guys, Zedrun, they also have Human Park, Anamora, and then we have Illuvium, Immutable, and their titles. What's going on here?
What's going on? I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, like I've thought about this a lot. What's going on here? I mean, obviously there's kick-ass titles all over the world, but yeah, we do seem to punch above our weight. Um, and I don't know. There's a lot of creativity in Australia. I think there's always been a lot of creativity in Australia. I I also think that I did actually have this discussion just the other night with someone, and more of a meta view, just thinking about the way that the Australian economy has shifted even over the last 20 years, right, away from like from a sort of industrial economy and through to more of a high tech economy, right? And so I think that people's priorities and people's where people go and are interested when they leave school has changed and shifted in the last sort of 2 decades, just at a much more sort of esoteric level, like going from straight into plumbing or building or whatever, and suddenly going, shit, I've seen what kids in America are doing, like over in the valley and stuff, and they're picking up like massive wages. They're just throwing ideas around and changing the world with tech. And Australia was a bit of a laggard there, but I think that they're really catching up now. So maybe that's one of the big sort of driving forces as well, is that people are suddenly going, there's an opportunity for me here. I can actually do something that's not just build a house. I can build a project. I can build a product. I can build a world. And so maybe there's just a bit of excitement in Australia, and that's played out in the last particularly the last 5 years. You look at the stuff coming out of Oz, it's wild. But yeah, look, I don't know. Hopefully, we can keep punching above our above our weight class.
Yeah, it's been an interesting observation. What do you? Yeah, so I've really appreciated this. This is Australians are very creative. That's what I think we've begun to see. What do you think's the actual as we play back the Red Village and the experience so far? I like asking this one to wrap it up as well. But what's going to make you the most proud in 10 years with the time that you're spending in Web3 today? Like, what do you think is going to make you look back and say, I did well?
Um, I think the thing that will make me the most proud is look back and go, I was able to build with conviction in an environment that a lot of people abandoned. Um, I was able to sit here and stake my place in the ground when a lot of people, speculative sort of dipped, and make a mark in a market that will be huge, trillions of dollars, in metaverse, in Web3. Make a mark really early on, and that's something to be proud of, is having that sort of foresight and looking at the future, and being able to build for something that's not there yet. So yeah, I think that'll be the thing that'll make me most proud. And aside from that, building a kick-ass world, building a cool project, replicating some of the experiences that I've managed to have gaming, you know, all my life, and my founders have had gaming, and being a part of that, kind of annal of history is really sweet.
Mm. What's the, and then before we wrap up for the audience, what do you think is, what are you most excited about on the Red Village roadmap?
Big thing for us coming up in our tournament mode is we're releasing a breeding protocol, which we call summoning. And summoning is, summoning is going to be a game changer. For a lot of people, this is where the game sort of starts, because it allows you to have a lot of, um, there's a lot of thought that goes into summoning, and how to, create the perfect champion to compete, in the Red Village ecosystem. And there's a lot of strategy and skill behind it as well. So that's really, really exciting for us. And we've got a bunch of other things like renting and lending and these things, which hopefully will, reduce the barriers to entry for people, that, they can come in and start playing around, and not have to have such a, big investment up front in buying a sort of an expensive NFT. And then, we do things like seasons, where we sort of reset stats and all these sorts of things, which give people just, they change the meta for people, but they give people an opportunity over a week or a fortnight or a month or whatever it may be to come in and engage and have a really good time. And then maybe they don't participate in the next season. Maybe they have a couple of weeks off, but then they come back again. And without having this constant sort of, shifting meta in the core game, these seasons allow you to have it in a sort of a fragmented way, which I think is really cool. And then progression. This is probably the thing that drives us a lot at the moment, that a lot of games are missing, is just this ability to progress within the game. It's having things that not necessarily just a financial imperative, but other sorts of imperatives that allow you to get better, or to improve, or to shoot for things, to aim for things. And that's something that we're working really, really hard on at the moment, is like a progression system, which is not too, in the not too distant future, which will really give people a lot of other things to aim for, as well as, winning some wrapped ETH. They'll be able to aim for all these runes, again, RuneScape here, but aim for all these cool runes that do a lot of cool things. And I think that's one of the key, it's the salt on the sort of Web3 game stake, is like progression will just make things really spicy. And I think people will be really excited about that. It's something that lacks in a lot of games. So yeah, that a couple of the big things. And then obviously, the big thing we're shooting for is an RPG. We're building that with Blowfish and here in Sydney, and supported by Animoca and a bunch of others. And that's exciting. That's really exciting. It's a way off, but it's really exciting.
Nice, nice. That's a lovely wrap up for this. I think, yeah, the Red Village, the dark fantasy RPG inspired by RuneScape. That's a good little title to have. Brendan, I appreciated you jumping on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Anytime, mate. Thanks for having me.